Hey everybody, it's Jay Baer from Convince and Convert, joined today by a very special guest, my friend Lee Odden, live from somewhere in the United Kingdom. So a secret location in the United Kingdom. Lee is the author of the brand new book, so brand new that the official release date was yesterday, called Optimize. How to attract and engage more customers by integrating SEO, social media, and content marketing. I had to actually read the subtitle because it wasn't really, couldn't remember it. Lee, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Doing great. Having a good time at a search conference here in Leeds, and really happy to talk about Optimize. I can't get tired of it.
You do a lot of conferences. I tell you what, you guys in the search business, you like to confer. There are conferences, there are confabs, there are a lot of that kind of thing in your business.
You know, it changes so much, and there's a lot of black box, so to speak, in terms of how things work, and that's the search engine's fault, I suppose. And so, you know, to keep people guessing, and that sort of thing. So folks get together and try and figure it out, you know, and even people like myself, I've been in the business for 15 years. You know, there's still new things, you know, you learn at these events because there's so many ways to answer the question.
Yeah, there's no right answer. It's great. You're trying to optimize how to do SEO. So the cover of this book is actually black, as you can tell, which you don't see very much. Was that a conscious decision, or the publisher said, hey, let's make it black? It looks very serious and impressive. Like, you need to read this, man. Usually, I think we see a lot more like yellows and reds and things like that these days.
Yeah. Well, you know, through very careful scientific analysis, I chose number 4.
I would have thought you would have optimized the color of the cover through some sort of multivariate, you know, consumer testing.
Well, you know, that might have happened. It might not, but it might have happened.
Very nice. Very nice. As you said, you know, your background is in search, and of course now you do a lot of social and the confluence of social and search, which is what the book is about. Do you think being from a search background is the best possible historical precedent to be good at social, or is it the worst possible background to be good at social?
Oh, well, if you're asking a search person, then clearly there's a very obvious answer to that. So interestingly, my background, you know, I came in as a online marketer search guy to a PR agency as a contractor, then became an employee, then became a partner, and then I'm doing what I do now. But so I had this sort of influence of public relations and the content there, the importance of messaging and influence, hitting me on one side, and then search and data and all that propeller hat kind of SEO stuff that was going on. And that's kind of where I come from, I think. And I found, interestingly, that the media relations efforts, the outbound calling of journalists, emails of journalists to get media placement for our clients, is something that I really recognize as a powerful link building tactic, you know? And so I think it's, I think there are some search people. Search people by their nature are adaptable. The long-time search folks that are successful are extremely adaptable. And I've said this morning that those SEOs were making money in '97 by optimizing for Alta Vista, Hotbot, and Lycos. And they're going to be making money, and I mean for clients or for themselves, next year or 10 years from now from whatever the future Google, Facebook, Pinterest conglomeration is.
Yeah.
Now, that's a small percentage. And so those folks, you know what, they're great at social. They'll be great at social, they'll be great at content, they'll be great at search, or a conglomeration of all of the above. But there are plenty of people who are tactically practicing SEO, and they're going to suck at social.
Just because they take sort of the relationship side out of it, and it's too formulaic.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's mechanical, not meaningful.
I mean, being a digital marketing, somewhat of a search guy myself, an email guy by background, I always feel like that experience helps you kind of break through the clutter of nonsense around social media measurement, right? Like people freak out about how do I measure social media, and it doesn't really seem all that terribly difficult to me. But maybe that's because I spent most of my career measuring email and search and landing pages and banner ads and a bunch of other things that you have to kind of make your own way. Do you find that as well?
I do, and I think folks who have had to really do a lot of work in justifying their existence by finding ways to measure and demonstrate the value of, the impact of what they're doing, are going to be sensitive to monitoring of KPIs, the fans, friends, followers, links, rankings, and whatever, but measuring business outcomes, right? And making those iterative or making those continuous improvements to always make it better. Always be optimizing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just slipped that a lot in there.
ABO.
ABO.
Second place is a set of steak knives. One of the stats that you had in the book, which blew me away, I actually had to read it 2 or 3 times, and I know it's not a misprint because I'm sure you checked it, but I think you said in the book that Google has 11 billion queries a month.
Yeah, that's from Comscore.
And Twitter has 350 billion tweets a day?
350 billion tweets a day.
I think that's what it says in the book, and I was like, that can't be true. That's crazy. That's got to be 350 million. It has to be.
I have to look in the book to see.
But the reality is that we think about Google as this all-knowing, all-seeing cyborg, but yet in terms of actual level of inquiry, level of chatter, Twitter and Facebook and those guys are right there.
Yeah, there's an infographic that documents 60 seconds on the web, right?
Yeah.
And I've used it quite a few times, so I remember quite a few stats from it. 60 seconds, let's see, it was 1,500 600 videos are uploaded to YouTube, 1,500 blog posts, and on that it's at 98,000 tweets every 60 seconds. 695,000 Facebook updates, 695,000 search queries on Google, all that, within 60 seconds.
Amazing.
And, it's kind of an information overload kind of thing, and someone coming into the content marketing space is not only competing against other companies that are creating content, but they're also, competing against the consumers that are empowered to publish.
Yeah. Yeah, I talk about that all the time, right? That your brand is competing against my mom and my wife and my best friend for my attention.
Right.
And brands have never had to really experience that in the past. That's really a first. My mom doesn't buy magazine ads, right? And my friends don't buy radio time, right? But all of a sudden now we're in the same sandbox, which is crazy. So it seems like a lot of companies are like, great, well, we'll just make more content, right? But your belief, i.e. this book, is don't necessarily make more content, optimize that content. Yeah. And how does that yield better outcomes?
Well, obviously it's, being thoughtful about a particular audience and a particular outcome or a category of outcome. A lot of interestingly, I've seen a lot of the SEO folks that are jumping on the content marketing bandwagon, in part in response to Google Panda's update to, do a better job at filtering out thin content that's not particularly useful, and recently the over-optimization update, and the other things, basically to make sure that user experience is even better on the search. In the search results or whatever. Anyway, the reason quality content is a better thing to do, obviously, is that rather than just adding more, and what I was getting at with the SEOs is that they're responding to the content issues by saying you should make more content. So their perception is leaving out the customer. They're leaving out empathy. They're leaving out who actually buys the stuff.
Yeah.
And they're also not talking so much, although I think they will be, so much about buy cycle optimization. So it's one thing to segment customers and kind of think about what their pain points and their goals are, and then create a content plan around that. And that's a qualitative effort, I think, right? And so therefore, not only by understanding actual customers and what they're interested in, but also taking a look at a segment and documenting what the buying behaviors are, right? Awareness, whatever you want, awareness, interest, consideration, and purchase, and then actually crafting editorial plans, specific to that buy cycle. And of course, anytime there's content, there's an opportunity for, search and social media optimization. And I think that's what I'm seeing. I mean, with our practice, much better results. One reason is because it's a shorter sales cycle, it's a more meaningful experience for customers, and inspires more referrals. But the other cool thing is it steals long tail traffic away from competitors that might be spending a ton of money on broad level optimization and pay-per-click ads, and it actually steals traffic from those consumers because you're optimizing for more specific things that customers actually care about, closer to the point of purchase.
Yep. One of the things that was really interesting in the book, you talk about bi-cycle optimization, is you talk about using personas. I'm a big fan of that, and used to do a lot of that in my web strategy consulting practice in the last company that I was in. But you really talk about creating personas from a place of data inputs, right? Where it's not just like, let's sit down and come up with an interesting caricature of our customers, but using a lot of data and analysis to then take that information and create personas based on that.
Right. Yeah, doing research into, not only surveying customers and asking them for, doing some primary research, I guess, and getting some sense of what their preferences are. And I like to split it up into the preferences for discovery of information, consumption of information, and sharing or action on that information. But understanding through web analytics, through other data sources like social monitoring. I mean, there's site-specific information that have demographic information associated with it. Going to social platforms that offer advertising, they usually have demographic information about who visits that site. And by comparing that demographic data or behavioral, psychographic, whatever, with information you have on your own customers, you can make some good decisions in terms of persona development. And the thing that folks need to understand is that there's not a start-stop with persona development, right? You're always refining it. The other thing is the notion of creating a negative persona, and that is, people that you don't want to be your customer anymore, or that you don't want to attract, so that you make sure that you're not optimizing for them.
Yeah, it's a great point. We talked about that with Erica Napolitano a couple weeks ago here about this notion of being really clear about who you don't want to sell, right? Her book Unpopular is all about that. Like, be really, really smart about who isn't your customer, and the more you understand that, the easier it is to understand on the flip side who your customer actually is.
Yeah.
You also talk in the book, and it was really interesting to me because it doesn't get enough play, is this idea of creating content specifically for HR and recruiting, which I thought was really smart. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. In looking at the totality of impact on optimization and looking at all the different content assets a company publishes, quite a few years ago, it came to the realization that, wow, while some of these things could be used for the purpose of augmenting marketing's ability to attract new visitors, because each web page is a hook in the water, but there's cost deflection or mitigation or efficiency, effectiveness, and reach that can be achieved through optimizing content for other departments. And HR recruiting is one example. So the idea there, of course, is to understand what it is that potential candidates or folks who know those candidates might search on, and optimizing that for search, maybe even social share, just to increase the reach of a talent acquisition or recruiting effort. And maybe those folks will pull themselves to you, and you can argue, maybe you can lower recruiting fees, or just cast a wider net for relevant candidates for you to hire.
Yeah, I mean, from an organizational impact perspective, right? I mean, the great employee is worth more than any one customer.
Exactly.
We talked about editorial plans in the book, and you mentioned it a moment ago. How does that work with your blog? The Top Rank blog, of course, is one of the finest blogs out there on the interwebs, and I read it. In fact, I just read an article a minute ago about some cool new Pinterest stuff. It's a great blog, super useful. How do you apply editorial calendaring, editorial planning to the blog? What does that process look like for you?
Well, first, over the last 6 months, I've had some help from Ashley Zeckman, who wrote the Pinterest post, and we follow some long-term guidelines and some adaptive guidelines. So I like to plan things out a couple of months in advance. When I'm working with clients, I try to go for 6 months, but but a couple of months in advance. And so we use sort of a matrix. There are, let's say, vertical markets or topics on one axis, and on the other axis are things like applications or industries and things like that. So, for example, I might have, Pinterest and optimization, Pinterest and B2B, Pinterest and consumer, Pinterest and this, and so forth. Or I might have, retail and Facebook, retail and Twitter, retail and SEO, retail and social media. And as we follow sort of a matrix like that, is one input for inspiration on our editorial plan for the blog. The other thing we look at is we have sort of a weekly calendar. So on Monday, I'll do a certain type of post, usually try to be thought leadership. And on Fridays, it's a news roundup. On Tuesdays, it's something else. So we try and follow some repetitive column-oriented schemes that way.
Brilliant. We do the second one with the weekly sort of editorial calendar, but the XY topical axis is really fascinating because what I do is say, I think that's interesting. I'm going to write about that, which is not terribly focused, which is why your blog has a lot more traffic than mine does. Because you're actually like, okay, we know what people want, and let's give them that. And I'm just like, I know what I want, and hopefully you agree, which is not quite as scientific of an approach.
Well, interestingly, once in a while I find myself saying, as a part of our scheme of things with this particular blog, and this wouldn't be true if I was writing more of a personal blog, but is that I'm not trying to be a platform for self-expression as much as content that supports our agency's objective. Yeah. We don't run advertising. We don't monetize the blog in any way. It's been free for 8 years now. The only way we monetize the blog are the inquiries that occur directly or that use the blog as part of inspiration. So offline, online, and you know how it goes. Yeah. For consulting gigs. And so to inspire those kinds of inquiries, and we follow that kind of guideline.
Yeah, love it. So you are a photographer. I always see you around conferences with a camera, and you're on Instagram all the time. You do a great job there because you have this crazy, insane travel schedule. You're in Europe, you're in Hong Kong, you're on the moon. What's your take on the whole Instagram, Facebook scenario? Are you running for the hills? Are you freaked out? Are you going to stop using it?
Well, Instagram's my favorite app to use personally. I don't do anything marketing oriented there. I do take photos of conference attendees. Like when I'm on stage, I do this little fun thing where I say, to break the ice, I'm looking for the best looking audience in the world. So if you could all get good looking, I take a picture and then I pop that up. But so because there's a personal connection to me, and I love the content that the images that other people are putting up on Instagram. That's something I enjoy. It's quick, it's mobile, it's obviously not on the web, but I actually try and use a lot of my photos for blog posts, like I did for a blog post today. So, what about Facebook and Instagram? I hope they don't Tommy Boy it.
Yeah.
My little sale and try and kill the little biscuit or whatever. I really hope they don't. And no, I'm not running for the hills. I'm going to continue to use Instagram because I do enjoy it. And maybe it's a personal thing. Maybe it's because it's a personal expression kind of a thing that I don't see it as being, the kind of thing not to use anymore because I can't get something out of it.
Yeah.
However, in comparison with Pinterest, when there was buzz about Pinterest doing, selling your personal photos, I deleted all the photos of my personal photos that I had uploaded. But that's a little bit of a different topic because the behavior on Pinterest isn't something I'm personally interested in, curating others' photos. I tried it. It's not for me. Yeah. I like taking photos and, responding and reacting to other people's photos that they've taken. It's Pinterest is going to be awesome until Facebook does something really shitty to it. So.
Well, and the thing is, nobody freaks out about Google buying YouTube at this point. That's worked out okay for all involved. So just because Facebook owns Instagram, I don't think means that they are necessarily going to kill it or screw it up or roll it in. They may do all those things, but I don't think it necessarily means that.
Yeah, I don't know. You've got that's a lot of money. and they've got to monetize, right?
Yeah.
So something's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but they could very easily say, okay, it's 99 cents a month, and their conversion rate on that I think would be pretty high amongst your hardcore users, and there, you could monetize it real quickly if you wanted to. Yeah, I'd be in a second. Yeah. This book is really fascinating to me because, as we said, coming from the digital side of it, like you you told the whole tale in here. I mean, if you really want to get good at optimizing search and social and content, I mean, you can read this book and keep it around, and you've got a really good blueprint for doing so. It was amazing to me in comparison to other books out there in our category who are a little bit more pontificating and here's the way the world works. I mean, this is very down the line. You do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, which is admirable. But did you ever have anybody on your team say, hey, boss, maybe we shouldn't write a book that tells people exactly what we do for a living? Was there ever any concern there?
Everything's not in there.
All the good stuff is not in Optimize, says Leo.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything, I suppose. If people don't think a certain way every day and you give a taste of that, it does seem like, holy crap, they're giving all this stuff away. And the reality is it's an iceberg.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's a lot of value in execution. I mean, this is a creative business more so than people realize. And it's not just creative on the, storytelling aspect, which is obviously important and will continue to grow in importance, but the creative content planning, the creativity, and the political issues you have to deal with, as you know, as a consultant with organizations, with execution, and then also the insight that comes from data. I can give even more detailed instructions about what one should do in all of those areas, but when it comes down to a human being actually turning that into value, that requires experience and knowledge, not just information.
Yeah, just because you give somebody a list of ingredients doesn't make them a chef.
Exactly. And my goal with the book was to, give something to people that would be valuable, right? I mean, I'm not looking to sign every company up in the world to be a client. There's certain kinds of clients that really, really appreciate content, that really appreciate the longevity of their tactics, not loopholes and exploits and shortcuts and whatnot, but they really want to create value. Those are the kinds of companies we want to do business with, and those are the kinds of folks I think, and also we're recruiting like crazy or trying to recruit, and I think those are the kinds of people that will appreciate a book like this, and so that's why it's done the way it's done.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I loved it. It's singing the song that I like to sing. I really, really like it. You've done a great job, and I think a real service to a lot of people. And I hope folks will take the time to really read it carefully, because you can learn an awful lot in that book, and from the man, the myth, the legend, Lee Odden. Thanks so much for being here. Congrats.